The morning frost had settled thick on the windows of Ruby's diner when the rumble of motorcycles first echoed down Main Street. Ruby Henderson paused mid-pour, the coffee pot hovering over Mrs. Patterson's cup as she glanced toward the door. She had owned this little establishment for nearly 15 years now, ever since her late husband James had passed and left her with their daughter Sophie to raise alone. The diner had become more than a business. It was her refuge, her purpose, and her way of staying connected to a community that had not always been kind to a black single mother trying to make her way. The sound grew louder. Ruby set down the pot and wiped her hands on her apron, the red fabric faded from countless washings but still dignified. Through the frosted glass, she could see the shapes of men on motorcycles pulling into her small parking lot. 25 of them, maybe more. They wore leather vests with patches she recognized from the news. Hell's Angels. Ruby felt her heart quicken, but she steadied herself. Fear had never served her well in life. She had learned long ago that meeting the world with an open hand often worked better than a closed fist. The bell above the door chimed as the first man entered. He was older, probably close to her own 58 years, with a thick gray beard and arms covered in intricate tattoos. His eyes were tired but kind. Behind him, the others filed in quietly, their boots heavy on the worn linoleum floor. "Ma'am," the bearded man said, removing his sunglasses. "I know this is unusual. We've been riding through the night, and the temperature dropped something fierce. We've got some guys who are really feeling it. Would you be willing to serve us? We can pay. We just need to warm up before we push on." Ruby looked at the faces around her. They were cold, that much was clear. Some were young, barely older than her Sophie who was away at nursing school. Others bore the weathered features of men who had lived hard lives. But in that moment, she saw something simple. She saw people who needed help. "Sit wherever you can find space," Ruby said, her voice steady and warm. "Coffee's hot and I've got eggs and bacon on the griddle." The relief that washed over the bearded man's face was immediate. "Thank you, ma'am. My name's Frank. Frank Morrison. You don't know what this means." As the bikers settled into the booths and counter stools, Ruby moved through her diner with practiced grace, filling cups and taking orders. Her regular customers, the handful of early morning folks who came in for breakfast before work, exchanged uncertain glances but said nothing. Ruby caught the eye of Mr. Chen, who had been coming in for his scrambled eggs every Tuesday and Thursday for a decade. He gave her a small nod of support. It was Sophie who had taught Ruby about acceptance. Her daughter, wise beyond her years, had once said during a heated conversation about prejudice, "Mama, you always told me people show you who they are by their actions, not their appearance. Maybe we should give everyone that same chance." Ruby was lost in thought, flipping pancakes, when she heard the new sound. Sirens. 2 police cars pulled up outside, their lights flashing blue and red against the morning gray. Officers Brennan and Walsh entered with their hands resting on their belts, their expressions hard. Ruby knew them both. Walsh had gone to school with her late husband. Brennan was newer to the force, young and eager to prove himself. "Ruby," Walsh said, his voice carrying across the diner. "You got a situation here." "No situation, Tom," Ruby replied calmly. "Just serving breakfast." "We got a call about Hell's Angels gathering at your establishment," Brennan added, his tone more aggressive. "We need to check this out. You men, I'm going to need to see some identification." Frank Morrison stood slowly, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Officer, we're just passing through. We got cold, and this kind lady offered us shelter and a hot meal. We're not causing any trouble." "That's for us to determine," Brennan said, stepping closer. "Everyone stay seated. We're going to run checks on all of you." Ruby felt something rise in her chest. It was not anger exactly, but a deep sense of protective instinct. She stepped between the officers and Frank, her small frame somehow commanding in that moment. "Tom Walsh, you listen to me," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "These men came in here frozen and tired. They asked politely if they could warm up and have breakfast. They have been nothing but respectful. Now you can stay and have a cup of coffee yourself, but I will not have you harassing my customers when they've done nothing wrong." The diner had gone completely silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Walsh looked at Ruby for a long moment. He remembered her husband's funeral, remembered how she had held herself together for her daughter while the whole town watched. He remembered the year she had organized meals for his own family when his wife had been sick with pneumonia. "Brennan," Walsh said finally, "stand down. Ruby's right. If there's no trouble being caused, we've got no reason to be here." He looked at Frank. "You all move along after breakfast, understood?" "Understood, officer," Frank replied. "And thank you." After the police left, the tension in the diner slowly dissolved like sugar in hot coffee. Ruby continued serving, refusing to let the interruption change her pace or her hospitality. She brought out extra biscuits she had been saving for the lunch rush. She made sure every cup stayed filled. When the bikers finally prepared to leave, Frank approached the counter. He pulled out his wallet, but Ruby shook her head. "The coffee's on the house," she said. "Ma'am, we can't let you." "You can and you will," Ruby interrupted gently. "You needed help. I gave it. That's what we're supposed to do for each other in this life." Frank's eyes grew damp. He reached into his vest and pulled out a patch, the Hells Angels emblem carefully removed from his own jacket. "I want you to have this," he said. "It means something to us. It means family. It means loyalty. You showed us both today." Ruby accepted the patch, holding it carefully in her palm. "You ride safe now." The motorcycles rumbled back to life and pulled away, their sound fading into the distance. Ruby went back to her routine, cleaning tables and preparing for the lunch crowd. She tucked the patch into her apron pocket and thought nothing more of it. Until the next morning, Ruby arrived at the diner before dawn, as she always did. But as she unlocked the door, she heard it. That rumble, that unmistakable sound of motorcycles, but this time it was different. This time it sounded like thunder rolling across the earth. She stepped outside and her breath caught in her throat. The street was filled with motorcycles. Not 25, not 50, hundreds of them, stretching down Main Street as far as she could see in the early morning darkness. Their headlights created rivers of light, and as she stood there in her coat, clutching her keys, the riders began to dismount. Frank Morrison walked toward her, and behind him came a wave of leather and denim. But they were not empty-handed. They carried boxes and bags. They carried tools and paint cans. They carried flowers and groceries. "Ruby Henderson," Frank said, his voice carrying in the quiet morning air, "yesterday you opened your door to us when you had every reason to turn us away. You stood up for us when others wanted to judge us by our appearance. You reminded us that kindness still exists in this world." He gestured to the crowd behind him. "We made some calls last night. Brothers and sisters from chapters all over the region. We heard your diner needed a new roof. We heard your daughter's in nursing school and money's been tight. We heard you've been taking care of this whole town for years without asking for anything in return." Ruby's hand went to her mouth as tears began to stream down her face. "We're here to take care of you for a change," Frank continued. "We've got roofers, electricians, plumbers. We've got donations for your daughter's tuition. We've got people who want to make sure this diner, and you, are taken care of the way you took care of us." For the next 3 days, Ruby's diner was transformed. The roof was repaired. The kitchen equipment was updated. The whole building received a fresh coat of paint. The parking lot was repaved. And through it all, Ruby served coffee and meals to an army of bikers who worked with the precision and dedication of people who understood the value of community. The town watched in amazement. Prejudices that had been held for lifetimes began to crack and crumble. People who had feared the leather-clad strangers began to bring them lemonade and sandwiches while they worked. Children who had been taught to stay away found themselves laughing with gentle giants who showed them motorcycle tricks and told them stories. On the final day, Frank presented Ruby with an envelope. Inside was a check for Sophie's remaining nursing school tuition and enough left over to cover her books and living expenses. "We take care of our own," Frank said simply. "And you're one of us now. You always will be." Ruby hugged him, this man she had known for less than a week but who had changed her life forever. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for showing my town that family isn't about what you look like or where you come from. It's about how you treat each other." As the motorcycles pulled away for the final time, the whole town came out to wave goodbye. Ruby stood in front of her diner, Sophie beside her having rushed home from school when she heard the news, and watched as the sun rose over Main Street. "Mama," Sophie said, taking her mother's hand. "You always told me that love multiplies when you give it away." Ruby squeezed her daughter's hand and smiled. "I did say that, didn't I?" "Well," Sophie continued, "I think you just proved it." Ruby's diner still stands today. Inside, hanging in a frame behind the counter, is a leather patch with the Hells Angels emblem. And beneath it, a small plaque that reads, "In memory of the day we learned that angels come in all forms, and kindness is the only currency that matters."